Good morning, everyone. My name is Vic Thompson, Councillor Vic Thompson, and I'm the Chair of the Infrastructure and Development Select Committee. And I'd like to welcome you all to this meeting. Before we begin, some general housekeeping. This meeting is held in person in the County Hall and is being streamed live on our County Council YouTube channel, and a welcome to anybody who would be watching. And that recording will remain available to view after the meeting. There's no fire alarm test expected, so if the alarm sounds, we must evacuate County Hall as quickly as possible and out of the nearest exit onto the muster point on the main car park. Under the Council's protocol on the use of media equipment at meetings held in the public, this meeting may be filmed, recorded or photographed. Anyone wishing to do so must inform me and ensure that it's done in a way that's clearly visible to everyone present. And the wishes of any individual not to be recorded or filmed must be respected. So, Nikki, apologies, please, and subs.
Thank you. Apologies today received from Councillor Barry Stone, Councillor David Bills, Councillor Jim Moriarty and Councillor Claire Bowes.
So this is I&D light today. Minutes. Members, are you happy with the minutes as presented? Good. I'll sign those afterwards, Nikki. Any interest from members? No? A few updates from me. As this meeting marks the last I&D meeting before the election on 7th of May, I just wanted to thank all members for their input into the committee, particularly since we changed roles a little bit and we became more of a scrutiny role. And we've had 16 items across 5 meetings since the new role. And even in the last one, in the last minutes, we had 7 requests made. So we obviously did quite a good job last time, and that was through this as well. You've all provided a very valuable input and scrutiny ahead of decisions being taken by Cabinet and full Council. And been very proactive in putting forward recommendations for how services and communication to residents, which we're going to go on to in a minute, can be improved. And I'm grateful to you all for doing that. And then you can go a deep dive into after this into your election. We have nothing from the public, no questions from the public, no local member questions or issues. So we're going to go on to item number 7. I'm afraid Graham isn't with us today, he's unavailable. So Carl's going to be our expert. Communicating planned roadworks to residents. I just told somebody, when I first became a councillor, I thought if I told the parish council, then everybody would know. More for me. Carl, over to you.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, councillors. I'm pleased to introduce this report, which sets out the challenges and opportunities associated with how we communicate planned roadworks and streetworks across Norfolk's 6,200-mile highway network. Members will be aware that maintaining and managing our road is a complex task involving not only Norfolk County Council, but also 79 statutory undertakers who have legal rights to carry out works on the highway. Last year alone, over 44,000 permit applications were submitted, with only a quarter relating to our own Norfolk County Council works. Nearly 7,000 emergency works were also undertaken, which were often at very short notice. These combined activities can create significant disruption for residents, businesses and road users. The purpose of today's report is to highlight how the Council's Streetworks team coordinates these activities within the national legislative framework and importantly, how we can improve the clarity, consistency and accessibility of information provided to the public. Whilst tools such as the Causeway One mapping platform already offer a good foundation, our communication could be more proactive, more user-friendly and better aligned across the county. The report therefore recommends measures aimed at strengthening transparency and public understanding, including the introduction of monthly planned works reports for each area, wider use of digital tools such as Causeway's content management module and supporting the work of our newly established Streetworks manager to ensure a more consistent approach county-wide. These improvements will help support members in handling inquiries and build confidence in how we manage the highway network. Accordingly, I invite members to consider the proposals in the report, comment on the introduction of the Streetworks manager post, and comment on how we can continue to improve communications with our communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Carl. First thing that comes to mind to me is, so planned streetworks. That isn't all down to Norfolk County highways. Who else does planned works?
Yes, certainly. We have, as I mentioned in the introduction, there's approximately 79 statutory undertakers who also undertake planned work on the network, and they are legally entitled to do that, and that they are the utility companies in the main. So last year, for example, about 44,000 permits were approved by the Streetworks teams. Only 25% of those are Norfolk-owned works relating to our capital projects, such as footway schemes, servicing schemes, and highway maintenance too. So the majority of the permits which are approved and the activity on the network is via the utility companies.
Yeah, I'll deal with the next bit later on. Members? Chrissy?
Yeah, I was just wondering sort of like how we will check the compliance of the information being within the 14 days and how will we enforce it if people aren't compliant, and also how we'll make sure everything is in plain English and that the other utilities and that sort of thing also make sure everything's in plain English. I do notice it's sort of when we have a lot of roadworks, which Norwich seems to have had a lot of roadworks lately, sort of like some of the signs really have to be far up, and we could do a bit more information probably on, you know, the diversion starts and this is where this road is what we're working on. Do you know what I mean? Because sometimes you can go up the road and go down another road, can't you? Particularly in Norwich. And I just think people need to have more information sometimes on these signs, and I just wonder how we can make sure the compliance is there. If the compliance is there, how do we enforce the compliance and make sure that everyone is speaking in plain English?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. We do have about 35 staff across the county in the Streetworks teams at various levels. Russ, next to me, is the permit manager for Norfolk and deals with the permit scheme and manages the permit scheme. But we do have Streetworks inspectors that go out on site. They look at what's on site, on live sites, and make sure the signage is as good as it can be and complies with the legislation. So we've got little in our powers that can change how the utility companies sign the network, because they should be complying with the legislation. But we will pick them up where signs are missing or misleading, or you know, if we have reports where drivers find the signage difficult to understand, then we can ask them to improve their signage. So I think we are a little bit restricted in terms of what we can do in terms of making it better, but we have done something recently where we've asked the utility companies to specifically detail where the closure is. So the advanced warning signs will now say the road is closed here, so that drivers know that it actually will be closed and where the point of closure is. But the inspectors will check the signs to make sure they can comply with the traffic signs and general directions regulations, and that the utilities and ourselves are complying with that, with the guidance that we need to. Does that help? Yeah. Okay.
Chrissy, one of the things you just said was more information. So you've heard some of that. What is there anything else that you or members?
Sorry. Sometimes you'll get a sign say diversion, and that's what it is. Diversion starts, right?
Yeah.
But actually, for some people, if they can still go down that road because all they want to go is down a road a few yards down, do you know what I mean, or whatever. And they'd say that the roadworks is actually on the right, but you need to get on the left, and you possibly could do that. It's just that sometimes, obviously, depending on what's happening, whether the whole road has to be shut off, isn't it? You know, it's just that some people are diverting miles around when they actually could have gone up that road a little way and gone left rather than right. You know, I don't drive, but I have this time in a car, you see, as a passenger to notice these things.
More time to look then.
I have more time to look, and I notice how much signage is there in some places. There's so much road furniture, do you know what I mean, which would confuse me, I think, if I was driving.
So Carl's point
Or it's
about...
best I don't.
Carl's point about the obstruction is here. That would be an improvement for what we've got now. So that's the sort of thing you're talking about. So that would be a big improvement. Yeah. Rob and then Catherine. Sorry.
Sorry, I thought you wanted to come back.
No. Rob and then Catherine.
Thank you, Chair. Before I make my comment, I'll just follow up on something that Chrissy's mentioned there. I immediately thought of an example. I remember seeing a lot on social media about businesses in Thornham in northwest Norfolk that were rather aggrieved with the council with regards to the type of signage and information that was provided. They were trying to tell everyone, we're still open. Come to Thornham, because there was some confusion as to signage as to what parts of the A149 were indeed closed and where. So I just thought I'd bring that up just there. The comment that the question that I wanted to have, Chair, is in relation to the One Network. I'm a huge fan of it. I think it's a brilliant tool. I think it is a bit clumsy in places, and even I struggle. I'll get messages from residents saying, Rob, what's happening here, there, or there, and I'll refer to it. So the idea of bringing in this content management module, I think, is really good. I think it's a brilliant move, and I'm fully behind that. I'm interested in whether the 13,500 annual costs of that module will be offset by reductions in customer service calls, and what kind of ideas the council have with regards to the cost-saving element. But then attached to that, presuming it does come in, what kind of integration is possible with social media? Because I'm aware that all of the main towns and Norwich have community groups on Facebook, for example, and they have huge numbers of people that use this. I, for one, often use the Kings Lynn accidents and roadworks page. It's got thousands and thousands of people. And to many people, that is one of the ways that they find out about what's going on in their area. So I would hope that the council could maybe consider making sure that they are members, the social media teams are members of each of those different towns that have these groups to pump out that information when it's available. So yeah, thanks.
So Carl, two things there.
Yep.
Can you explain the difference? Because I've used in you know the Causeway for a long time, and when you open it up, it looks like it's full of roadworks. So what's the difference to the one I'm looking at today and this Causeway content management going forward?
So
what difference? Is it something only for us, or is it?
It's in addition to what we've already got. So the mapping system will obviously still be available, and the content management system will be able to provide more detail to residents and the public in a plain language form. So it would be a benefit in terms of how we communicate with residents and the public about what's going on the network. And just in terms of the costs, we do generate some income from our activities on Streetworks through Streetworks fee income through FPNs, and the cost could be covered by that, so there wouldn't be a cost on the local authority to do that. But I mean, we're still exploring the benefits of it, Chair. So you know, we can look at whether that could interface maybe with social media opportunities as well. I'm not sure on that point, but I do know that our comms team have been very, very proactive in terms of social media and doing what they do best. to try and get certainly around emergency closures out to the wider
So
public.
so what does it do different to now? So if I went on this morning and I looked in my area and I click on one of the little chevrons and it says from the 14th to the 23rd it's shut or it's traffic lights, what would the new content module give us that we don't have at the moment? Because I find it quite easy, to be honest.
Yeah. So it will provide more granular, more detail around what the closure is for, when it's due to start, when it's due to finish, what the activities are, and it will provide a greater update of information to the residents in a plain English form. So the map is very good in terms of trying to understand geographically where the work is happening and when it's due to start and stop. But I think the content management system will provide more details to the public.
So will members and residents have to join something to get that extra content?
Yes, they will. Yeah.
Right. Can you, quick 101 on how we're going to do that?
Do you know any more about that, Russ?
I don't know the exact details. I'm sorry. All I am aware of is that there is a better interpretation of that particular work item, and this module would allow members of the public, businesses, members, to subscribe to email alerts that would give you more up-to-date information.
Right. So we'd be doing that within our community. We're not necessarily talking about Essex or elsewhere. We're doing it in our community.
It would be for Norfolk, yes.
Rob, does that give you some confidence?
Yes, yeah, and I look forward to seeing how the council will be able to integrate and use social media. Huge tool. It's one of the things that social media is good for, making sure that you can find out what the problems are.
Can I ask you, Rob, how many social media sites do you have? Just in yours? You said one village.
Well, certain community groups have much larger reach than others. But when I was doing a little search, I looked at Dereham, I looked at Thetford, I looked at Norwich, and there's always one group that's traditionally, looks huge compared to others. So it would be good to make sure that we as a council have those clear go-tos that we look at.
I was just making the point that you have got a lot. There are 84 of us, and we've all got different ones. It's a big job, and so Graham's going to take over from you.
Thank you very much. Fully agree. Social media is a really good way to get messages out. And although it's the responsibility of the utility companies for emergency closures, as they're the most disruptive, what we've recently been trialling with with our communications team is highlighting those emergency works on the network from utilities, because they are very, very disruptive. And like it's been highlighted, really useful tool, and 2.4 in the report highlights that with one recent one in Norwich, where there was a utility collapse which affected the in a ring road. Within, I think, 24 or 48 hours, our posts putting the information out there had something like 300,000 views in that short period of time. So it is a really powerful tool to get messages out, hopefully alert people so as they can change their sort of travel plans and journeys to avoid that disruption. So we've been trialling that, and it's been very successful. So we're looking to carry on putting that information out for those really disruptive parts of the network.
So I'm generally supportive of everything that's being suggested in the paper. So I don't exactly want to prolong the debate unnecessarily with more examples. But I do just want to say two things. One about my journey yesterday, when I discovered a road closed sign on the B1134 turning off from the B1077. And I and then a number of other vehicles, including delivery lorries and so on, all pulled up on the left to check Google Maps to see whether you could actually go through. Absolutely nothing. No information about where the road closure was on the B1077, B1134. wasn't clear whether it was because the Pulham Road was closed at the next roundabout, but then why would you close it if you can go to the B140 that way, A140 that way? So, so in the end, given my sat-nav and Google Maps thought that there was nothing, I went through and there was indeed nothing, right? And I now look online and I see that it is a Norfolk Highways thing, and they've closed it today. So they had the notices up yesterday with no information about where the closure was, no guidance about the fact that it's way along on at Tivitchell, so there are loads and loads of turnings off that you might have wanted before the road closure, and that's Norfolk Highways, not a utility company. And I really think that Norfolk Highways need to put information about where the closure is, because really, if we want utilities to do that, we need to do that ourselves. And then the second thing is my journey to here today, which I came down Southwell Road. At the beginning of the road, just after the bridge, not quite the beginning, it said, oh, the road will be closed here from the 16th of March. So I went on. And then there was a notice saying the road will be closed here from the 2nd of April for Cadent Gasworks. And actually, the road was closed. It was bollards across, road closed, right there in front of you today. And it appears to be resurfacing. So what are they going to do? They're going to resurface the road with no warning, no notices to say the road is closed. And then they're going to dig it up next week. So what is going on that I was able to go through because I was on a bicycle, but if I'd been in a car, it would have been round you go, no idea where you can go, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult to talk about the specifics in here, but we'll certainly take them away.
When the signage goes up is the point that Catherine's making. So what's the protocol for, in a planned one, to put up the notices to say this is going to happen? Because you did say one said the 16th of March.
That's right. As far as I could see,
Yeah.
Both the notices I came past said it was in the future, and then it turns out that there's one right now with no warning at all.
Yeah.
That was this morning.
What we'll have to do, Catherine, is you can take that offline with Carl later. We want to talk about it in the round. So the time scale, when I know people get really irritated when there are signs up and there's no sign of work. So do we try to put it up a week before, a couple of days before?
Yeah,
because that's one of the points raised by Catherine.
Yeah, it should be the 14-day period in advance of the work starting, so that drivers do get that advance warning that the road is going to be closed. And
but that would be for when it's going to be, not the thing that says road closed ahead. Right.
There'll be advance warning of to say this road will be closed in 14 days in advance. When the road is closed, the red and white signs, the road closed ahead signs will go up, advising of the closure.
So in this case, I had one where the road closed ahead sign was up, but on the day before it was actually closed. And I had one today where there was no road closed sign, only advanced ones. So these are two that really don't comply, right?
So I think it's on how we deal with that, when it's going to happen. And also, you said that one of the roads was closed, yeah? There was no notice, it was just closed.
This morning, yes.
So I can't imagine how that would happen, because we normally coordinate those things extremely well.
Yeah, definitely. And it's,
but we'll take that offline later on, but just as a point
yeah.
of note. Rob, I've got to go to Chris first, then I'll come back to you.
Excuse me. Thank you, Chair. Well, first of all, I'd like to commend the new role of Streetworks Manager. Sarah was quickly into the job a few days after I had a major incident in my division, and we discussed some of the problems. She was very frank about that, and this identified why the comms element is such a complicated and complex and interwoven issue, because there are so many elements to it, some of which are out of our control. And I was thinking, as I sat here, if we had all 84 members here today and we asked them to write down their top 5 highways complaints from their residents, 90%, I think, we'd probably share the same issues. So I think it's a question of expectation and achievability. I've had many a conversation with Graham, we call it conversation, shall we, Graham, with regards to signage and having them, like, where is the road closed, for argument's sake, and it comes down to resource. If we're not prepared to put the resource into this, we're going to have these problems continuing. But coming back to the work that Sarah's doing, I think there's going to be more from her than what we see in this report, which will improve situations, which should narrow the need for the degree of comms that we're requiring right now. So I'm hopeful we'll see more work on this. You know, to illustrate how complex it is, we recently had an issue on the A10 involving signage, road closed, diversion, etc. And this was as a result of an accident. So it was a request to the police. 2 days, 3 days after all cleared up and done, road open, road closed, diversion, one sign still in situ, which is fine for the locals, but not if you're travelling any distance. So it comes back to the other work stream that we've got here, the memorandum of understanding with the police on powers of street park. That sort of thing can be included into that dialogue and that conversation, because clearly that's not functioning as we would wish. So I think, in fairness to officers, it's going to be very difficult to pin anything down on a single paper. This needs to be a number of papers working collectively in order to achieve what we want to achieve. Then we have to decide how high that ambition is for Norfolk County Council, because I know that when it comes to highways, that's always the budget that gets chopped to support other areas and other functions of the council. So it's very, very difficult. Coming specifically to the comms, sorry, Chair, a bit long-winded. In addition to communicating, quickly with one network, I'm not a fan of it, so I don't think we should lean into this too heavily. It's great at identifying where the problem is and what the problem is, but when you look at on your phone at the diversion routes, you need an IQ of 140 to work out what's going on. So I don't think it's great, in all honesty. I love the idea of, you know, residents being able to sign up for alerts. That would be really good. But again, experience recently where a road was continued to show as closed on that app 2 days after it was opened. So we come back to Catherine's problem. So this all has to be a question of resource. I don't think it's a question of bad policy, bad protocol. It's just there's too much going on for the team to manage. That's my logical take on it. Differentiating between a rural and an urban area. I think, you know, you have a poor diversion route, you get chaos. We have a poor diversion route, excluding the Outwell incident recently. We get massive diversions going miles and miles and miles, which is not sustainable. And that is obviously one of our ambitions, is to be more sustainable. So that investment in better signage could improve our sustainability margins, I feel. Yeah, and just the final thing on the comms, another element I think the residents would be more comfortable with if they understood what the heck was going on. So as somebody I alluded to already, they turn up and there's nobody working. Now, obviously, if that's a particular utility company, they have a protocol in the way that they manage it. Some come and do one job, they leave onto another job, but the public don't understand that. They see that they're being inconvenienced and nobody's working. So we've got a very, very good comms team here. Is there a possibility that we could put out some little mini videos explaining what we do, our role, how things are actually delivered on the ground? Part really educating, if you want, and we've had this conversation before in the little room next door about providing more information and more understanding and hopefully reducing the frustrations of some of the areas that we perhaps are falling down on. Sorry for that rant.
No, not at all. To some of your points, TROs are on the Future Work Programme already. Diversions is a point I think we should take up at some point, because in the planned roadworks, the diversion. And I know for a fact where I live, the diversions are always very long. Therefore, the buses and the trucks and things, the local people take all the little shortcuts, go through the little roads that are in between that are on the de minimis rule. We couldn't put a diversion on that, but we'll talk about that in a minute if we can. So that TRO is coming up, so the bits will come up. I think the other bit that we're leading to is unplanned roadworks. We need a report on that because that's slightly different. So that comes at the end on the field work programme. Rob, back to you.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I wanted to talk about the steps that, well, given the Department for Transport's unfortunate refusal to give councils stronger powers, I was interested to know what steps Norfolk County Council can actually take to hold utility companies more firmly to account. Because when we look at Appendix 1 on page 21 of the report, it's a huge figure, nearly 32,000 different permit numbers. I mean, wow, that's... And I know that often I get residents saying, Rob, I've struggled to get home today. I was trying to work out which way Anglia Water weren't blocking roads and the like. So, I'm interested to know really about what's, you know, what can we do as Norfolk County Council?
It did, before we asked, it did strike me when I looked at 1.26 and saw those recommendations. I was ticking lots of, yeah, I like that, I like that, I like that. Oh, is the mayor going to do that? And then to get to the end and see that it had not been taken up, I guess we're going to put that back in to them.
Thank you, and thanks for highlighting the Transport Select Committee's work. So what we're talking about today is very much a national debate, an issue which is very live everywhere, because as highlighted elsewhere in the report, a lot of the infrastructure, utility infrastructure that we all rely on is within the public highway. And as a lot of that infrastructure is 50, 60 years old, it does need replacement. There are, unfortunately, constant emergency works required for burst water main, gas leaks, etc., power outages. So it is a national concern. So much so the Transport Select Committee made all of those recommendations. And like everyone else who's read those recommendations, they would go some way to help give local highway authorities more control and influence over the works that do happen within the public highway, and basics like making it mandatory to actually have that added information on signs saying explicitly where road closures are, because that's not within the national legal framework side of things. We've had to get voluntary agreements with all of the utility companies to put that information on, so for their planned works, whereas the Transport Select Committee's recommendations, if all implemented, that would have made that mandatory. So there's a lot of really good stuff in those recommendations. Although I think the response in September rejected most of the main recommendations. Since then, because of the national lobbying, including from highway authorities like ourselves, because of that lobbying, the Department for Transport has agreed to move some of those recommendations forwards now, and we're hopeful that there'll be more moved forward in the future as well. So I think that's where, like the committee discussed a moment ago about future reports, I think that will be really helpful, because this is a sort of live situation, and hopefully there'll be more positive developments in the coming months as well. Because, as I say, those recommendations are really strong and powerful and would help everyone. But as I say, hopefully the Department for Transport will agree to more of those going forwards.
Carl, can I come up with two things that I've pulled out? The Causeway one, we supply the information to them, but we don't do that for sat-navs. So sat-navs and are completely separate things, work in a completely separate way. Yeah?
Yep, that's correct.
And a quick 101 on how we do diversions, because as I say, I had a 30-mile round trip planned the other day for me, but I cut that down by 25 miles because I took a shortcut that I know that wasn't covered. Quick 101, how do we, so when we get it in, how do we decide what the diversion route would be? And can we make it simpler and easier? And I don't know.
Again, we are tied with legislation somewhat, and if we close an A road, we are required to divert traffic onto a similar class piece of our network, basically. There are exceptions where we may consider what the most pragmatic route might be to make the journey times easier for people, but it is quite difficult when you look at the volume of traffic that might use an A road compared to the volume of traffic that might use a lower class road.
And the types of vehicles.
And types of vehicles, exactly that. So we are required to sign a diverted route on the same class road is the baseline requirement, and the diversion signs take you from one point of the closure around to the other end of the closure, so you can get from point to point. And I think that's something that does need clarifying to people, because it's not telling you how to get to your end destination, it's telling you how to get to the other side of where the point of closure is, so then you can continue on your journey.
But our now here will alleviate that, because I had somebody who was going down the Kirby Road, saw the diversion, they went down the 146 and they came back on the Kirby Road to find their house was the other side of the thing, so they had to go all the way away. So the where here, when we're starting that straight away?
Yes, we should be doing that now, so that should help for those people that see those advance warning notices in place now, for when they're in advance of the formal road closure.
And the third-party people who do it for the utilities, are they going to be?
That I understand has been discussed at our Highway Authority Utilities Committee group.
Because I think that's something,
and I think they're on board with that.
Yeah, something that we'd like to come back to know about, because that's,
Yeah.
you know, given that we've also got the 24-hour rule, and then that. Any more? Rob again.
I was just going
Rob and then Chris.
I was just going to ask, with regards to recommendation action required item 3, whether or not other members share my idea and thoughts with regards to using social media groups. Could that be documented? We're talking tens of thousands of people that are parts of these groups in different towns. Can we go into that level of detail here?
I think so. I think anything we can improve the system.
I think the challenge with that, just to highlight, which was part of the discussion, is that there are hundreds, if not thousands of those groups across the whole county. So that would make that really difficult to keep under constant review and management, and new groups might be set up every few days, especially if there's a local issue. So that's where if we put stuff out on the County Council website, and like the recent examples that we had with hundreds of thousands of views within a very short time, that network stretches out really quickly. So that's our sort of mode of operation in terms of putting the information out there, and the amount of times that was shared in a very small amount of time, that then hopefully gets that message out wider.
Because my only codicil to what you said, I agree entirely with what you say, that there are other people who have responsibility. That's me as a member, and that's the parish councils. And I have noticed one website where there are more and more, there's more and more information being given by residents. Oh, have you noticed this is closed? So I think we're tasking these guys, but we have to task ourselves and the parish councils to also do it, and they probably can do it more.
I think the point I was trying to make is that it is very obvious that there are particular groups in a town where people go for this information. And I mean, I take my hat off to the people, members of the community that update people and tell people about the issues and prevent dramas, and probably help protect our road systems from grinding to a halt if it wasn't for these community people. So hats off to them. But there are particular sites. I try to be as proactive as possible when I see problems and issues, and I'm out on social media, tell people about it. But my thought is that if the message comes from the council and they've chosen one particular group that's larger than any other in that area, the gravitas of that coming from Norfolk County Council, I think would just reassure people. But I do see the point you're making, that
We couldn't
potentially
do it
it could be a huge task.
We could not do it with everybody. Yeah.
That's one that constantly changes.
Yeah. Any more? Oh, sorry, Chris, and then David.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, just coming back to the Google point, put Graham on the spot here now. Some of the work that I've been doing around the Welney Wash closures, road closures, which are sporadic in terms of when they close, when they open, when they do, when they don't. Alex, who was leading on that in terms of all things electronic, had opened up conversations with Google, who are understandably very closed about their entity, and had sort of got a foot in the door regarding getting such information onto their mapping system. Are we able to pursue that and probably stretch that into our roadworks? That's the first part of the question. The second thing is, I'm just going to come back as well, comes back to communicating in order to foster and build understanding amongst the public, who understandably feel there is a central point for everything that happens on the road. And that is another issue as well. So therefore, every time something goes wrong, the focus is understandably directed to that one central point, which is Norfolk County Council. And exactly. And therefore, maybe that would help again build the understanding, which, leaning into what Rob has said, we've got some very good residents out there who don't sit there and moan about it. They sit down and put constructive information out for the other people in their community. So it'd be good to support them as well. Thanks.
David? Sorry.
Thank you, Chairman.
David,
I
if
think,
you can just... Sorry, David.
sure.
We're just going to get a kickback.
Not a kickback. As Chris pointed, the sat-nav one and the Google one to us. Yeah, that is another huge challenge, because there's no one organisation that you can liaise with and get information out to all the sat-nav companies, because there's many different sat-nav companies. There's a variety of other organisations that has that data. We are trying to pursue that, but as I say, there's no one catch-all nationally at the moment. Unlike the causeway system that's been highlighted, and that's government-led and government-driven, so set up so there's consistency but at least there's one I'll say source of that data that can be used nationally, so people can go to that if they so wish to, and access that information, and then it's consistent across all 154 highway authorities across the whole country. There's nothing similar in terms of the sat navs and all of the other apps you can get on your phone to try and help you get from A to B as well. But we are trying to carry on pursuing that. Hopefully one day that'll be easier, and we'll be able to get that one message out, because like you highlighted with Welney Wash or managing streetworks, it would be good to have that real live up to the second information that everyone can access. The other point you just made around NCC being the focal point, yes, people do think that Norfolk County Council do have more powers than we've actually got in terms of managing streetworks and roadworks. And the Transport Select Committee recommendations is a really good example of that, where actually we have to work within the national rules and regulations. Utility companies have their own Act of Parliament, which gives them powers to basically just shut the road and tell us 24 hours, up to 24 hours afterwards. So it is a really challenging environment. And the other bit in terms of that focal point I will just highlight, which hasn't cropped up so far today. At the moment, we've got 3 large national highway improvement schemes under construction in Norfolk on the A47. So that's National Highways. We obviously work closely with National Highways and liaise with them as much as we can. But again, those three major works are really disruptive, and we saw just before Christmas the challenges with certainly the traffic management, the initial traffic management with the Thickthorne Junction improvements. So really welcome improvements, and we work closely with National Highways, and because although we don't have the overriding control of that, through our lobbying and the lobbying from others as well, we did work with National Highways for them to change their traffic management layout, which certainly reduced a lot of the significant congestion that I think everyone was experiencing who travelled that bit of the highway in November last year. So National Highways are also part of this jigsaw, so as well as the 79 utility companies, housing developers, us doing our own works on the highway network, National Highways also do their works on the A47 and A11 in Norfolk. Thank you.
David.
Thank you, Chairman. Just a couple of points. I think Councillor Dawson said earlier that some of these long diversions on certain roadworks out in the sticks are unsustainable, but I'm not quite sure what he means or what we could discuss about how you make those sustainable. If the roadwork's going to take place, then presumably the long diversions are inevitable. The other point I wanted to make was I very much welcome this report, particularly to improve communications, and particularly the reference on the second page of the report to translate technical and hopefully other information into plain English. But I wanted to ask about the 79 statutory undertakers. I assume that's not a reference to the traditional word for funeral directors. I don't mean one by one, but in terms of 79 seems a very large number. How do you group those, just to explain why there are so many?
Streetworks has been in play since 1993, and over that time there has been great change in the utility industry. Regulations have changed. We don't just have British Telecom anymore. We have lots and lots of various telecommunications companies, and quite simply, a lot have found an interest to invest their network in Norfolk. It's quite surprising how many water companies have apparatus installed in Norfolk. It's not just Anglian Water, Essex and Suffolk Water as your main ones. And over time, they've simply built up. Once that company has installed their network, it might be an investment from a telecoms company. Once that investment has been delivered, the only time they need to return is to dig it up for maintenance purposes. So a lot of the 79 utilities aren't active at the moment, but they do own apparatus in Norfolk, and there is a potential for them to come back. I can't remember I think there's something in the order of 35, 40 active utilities in Norfolk, which is still to me a very high, surprising figure. And they are utilities who over the last 3 years have invested in Norfolk and are still installing.
So classifying them, we'd have gas, we'd have electric, we'd have water, we'd have telecoms. Are there any other classifications? Oh, the developers. Somebody who's building a new site and wants an entrance road.
Yeah, developers, private work. I'd categorise those all as private. A developer, a household, a resident may have the need to dig up the highway outside if they had an issue with their sewer connection or something. National Highways are another highway authority who also might have the need to work on our network as part of one of their schemes. They're quite small. The bulk of the work out there is utility work. But that list isn't exhaustive. There are other types of utilities that aren't in Norfolk, like your steam delivery and sort of alternative energy source utilities who currently aren't here.
Right. Catherine, and then Chris again.
Yeah, just looking at Appendix 1, which gives us the number of permits by the utility sector, and I'm struck by the fact that the vast majority are telecoms. And it does seem to me that the multiplication of privatised companies doing telecoms, and also, I mean, what we're hearing is that what's happened since the privatisation of utilities is that we've got this supposed competition, but of course for most of us there is no competition. It's a single thing, and then where there is competition, it's absolutely destroying our road network because multiple companies are putting down cables for the same stuff, and really the chaos is caused by that fragmentation of our utilities, which are fundamental utilities that are the the essential supplies for the country.
And the fibre people have become definitely one of those that people need. I think the only shining light in that is they're putting out their networks at the moment. Once their networks are there, then we should see less of this, Carl? You're shaking your head now.
Well, hopefully so, because obviously this is the very disruptive part in terms of installing their networks. But it just goes to show that we want the investment, and with that investment does come some disruption. But there are a number of different fibre businesses that are wanted to install their infrastructure in Norfolk to provide their private services.
Chris?
Thank you, Chair. Is that on?
Yeah, go.
Sorry. Yeah, no, I'd just like to pick up on David's part regarding my comment on sustainability, so I'll clarify that. And Graham will be very familiar again with Stowbridge and the issues there. That's an area over about a mile where there's about £30 million worth of turnover of businesses. Most of them, if not all, are reliant in some way on HGVs. There's an HGV testing station. There is also 2 river bridges and a railway crossing. So when we get any issues along that road, if there isn't a destination information on the signage, i.e. road closed at such and such, we'll find those HGVs will continue with their journey before they discover where it says road closed. So not only does that mean, because we're in the fens, quite a long deviation, it's very difficult for them to manoeuvre to turn their vehicles around. So that's one area where lots of time and diesel would be expended unnecessarily. The other one would be, and this is particularly with utility companies, not our own works, is that we put, or the signs are delivered in close proximity or too close a proximity to the works. If they were to put back further in rural areas, then it would prevent lorries, etc., actually taking that route in the first place and taking a slightly longer, but in terms of overall mileage, a better route for them. So, I'll use the classic A10, 1122, and then between that, you've just got C-class roads at best and unclassified. And so that would, if we were able to put some destination closure signage out, it would improve sustainability, but more importantly, from my perspective, it would certainly cut down time wasted for business and cut down fuel use, which is obviously very important now for business. Thank you.
I think one thing that we've learned on this side of the aisle is that is going to happen. The here is going to happen. So that will make life.
With respect, Chair, the here isn't sufficient. What you need is road closed at, on the bigger.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, more impact. Well, we're already getting here on certain signs, but they're not always exactly where the closure is, and that's okay for regular users who familiarise themselves with it. Yeah. We need it at the point of first information, road closed at ABC. Yeah.
Well,
thanks.
It's just that they use the word here in a pun again. What I mean is where that is, where the stoppage is, needs to be at the furthest point away.
Yeah, but again, in the rural areas, if you put here, that might be a mile or 2 miles further back from where the actual works will be taking place, where there may well be businesses, and certainly agricultural businesses in that area. So it needs to be at the first point of information to direct road closed at Marsh Road.
But that's what we're going to do, Carl, isn't it? Sorry, Russell.
Yeah, we are seeing that more and more being used, that where the traffic is deviated on the approach to the closure, we should already have road ahead closed. Regular users will wait the here, or they'll pass the here board because they're passing it, and they'll know from their experience, am I going to go this side of the road closure or the other side, knowing whether to follow the diversion. But if you are a through route user or someone who isn't a regular user of that road, what is helpful, and you're very correct, and we are seeing this more and more, is for whatever parish is the other side of the road closure, like for 3 holes, follow diversion. And you'll know that you can't get to that part of the destination. And we should be seeing that, that deployed more and more.
Because that's something that you're learning in your side of the aisle. That's one of the things that we think is important.
Yes.
The identification of where the actual event is really important, and where we give them the information about that is equally important. Is that right, Chris? Yeah.
So at risk of sounding like I'm nagging on this, we've got to look at the HGVs on rural roads. As was already alluded to, when they divert or choose their own diversion, we end up picking up the tab for the potholes and the busted angling water pipes, closing yet another road. So it's important for a whole range of reasons on certain routes, and I'll stick with Stowe because Graham knows it well. It's so important where there's a heavy business use and a heavy HGV use that we look, we may not have the resource or the time to do it across the board, and I accept that, being reasonable, but we ought to be able to target those areas that the local area teams know well and provide more signage. Thank you.
Carl?
Yeah, thanks. And we totally agree with you, Chris, in that respect. And there is no legal requirement for the utilities to do it, but we've asked them to do it, and we've seen that they are starting to comply in greater numbers. We are doing it for our own works, and if we're not, I want to know about it so I can take it forward with the supply chain. So we've made some decent progress, Chris, but there's more to do in terms of that. So hopefully you'll see more of that sort of really useful information being displayed on those signs going forwards.
Graham?
Just quickly to add to that, 1.26 in the report, the list of the Transport Select Committee recommendations. Bullet point 8, road closure signs should specify exactly where the closure is. So again, that was one which wasn't taken forward nationally, but like it's been discussed here, so useful for road users. So that's why we're asking utility companies to provide that for all planned works, and we've already implemented that for our planned works as well.
Chrissy, and then Catherine.
Just a basic question, really. How can we put pressure on to make sure the utilities to finally actually make it legal? They have to, because I think, to be honest with you, it's more the utilities that will cause most of the, the chaos, around some roads. Because one utility comes down one road and it's blocked off, and then the next week another utility comes around. Do you know what I mean? And they are not really very good with the signage because they are legally binded to. So simply, how much pressure and how can we make it legal? Because to my mind, half the time it's the utilities that's causing the chaos.
Yeah, it's an interesting point, and the utilities should be complying with the legislation in terms of the signage and also the conditions that we would put in the permit for them to work on the highway. And we will enforce that through our regular inspections of the utilities, and if they're not complying, then we can issue a fixed penalty notice for them to correct their signs, and also penalise them in reality for them not complying with the legislation and the traffic management requirements.
Catherine?
I just wanted to come back on the question as to whether the digging up for telecoms would come to an end. I think it would be naive to think that there's any kind of stability that we would ever reach, because what happens is that one telecoms company goes out of business, or they fail to maintain their thing, and another one comes along and decides that they can compete for the business, they can provide some service that that they're going to promise. And so that the whole problem is that we don't have one publicly owned telecoms provision that has to maintain their service. They can just stop providing it and get the people to move to a different company if they don't want to maintain their infrastructure anymore. You know, it's an inherent problem of deliberate competition, that the competition will drive some out and bring other new ones in, and they will lay new infrastructure, and it will go on forever.
I'm showing my age, but you be careful what you wish for, because some of those big organisations were not good. Rob?
Thank you, Chair. My question is in relation to the member engagement that's being proposed. I guess I'd like to know how far in advance councillors will be receiving the information for the works. There's nothing worse than getting a resident say, what's going on here, and us not having been prior informed about it makes the council look a bit rubbish, and it makes the councillor feel a bit crap. So, cheers.
We do have TROs on... Is it to plain English? Or do I have to decipher it for my resident?
I'm not sure whether we can change the language really, but the reason it's in that format is because it's part of a circulation and distribution list that goes out to others to legally inform them of the position in terms of a temporary road closure, for example. So you should be getting those notices of when that's happening.
So on a planned one,
yeah,
we should get plenty of notice, the planned one. So I've
Exactly.
got Cadent coming into my division, and I know that already. It's the unplanned ones where I have a problem. So at the moment we're doing the planned ones.
Yeah.
So all members, all parish councils, blue light, bus companies.
Yep.
Anybody else?
It's the stakeholders in general, so everybody
would
that
get
need
that information.
Exactly. The difficulty is with the unplanned works where we don't know about them ourselves and work's already started. The notice is done retrospectively, and members will get insight of that, but it's after the work has started on site, and that's where the difficulty is with all of those immediate or emergency works.
Yeah. The situation at the moment is we're talking about how we get it to residents, and we're talking about members, we're talking about parish councils, and I think Rob made a suggestion we could be selective in the areas that the sites that we choose. We can't do everything. Is that something that we are looking to do, can do, going forward? Because this paper is about residents.
It is, yeah. As mentioned earlier, in terms of the emergency works and the emergency works from utility companies in particular, that's what we've started trialling recently to get that message out there. Ultimately, it's the responsibility of the utility companies to get that information out there. But what we're finding is we're getting a far better reach by going out on the Norfolk County Council platforms to get that message out, and say that the numbers speak for themselves. The 300,000 plus views in 48 hours was phenomenal. So there's definitely a desire for that information out there. But say the utility works are the real challenging ones, the emergency works, because was it 7,000 of those a year, and they're the ones say nobody knows about in advance. Literally, we find out after the event in most of those cases.
An interesting point is we have prosecuted some of those people because it's not an emergency.
We haven't prosecuted them for that reason. We've prosecuted some utilities for some other reasons,
right.
i.e. unsafe working on the network. So yeah, we've been proactive in terms of holding the utilities to account for other reasons, but not specifically for that.
Right. Okay.
Chair, my actual question though was about as if I've understood the papers correctly, 84 emails will go out to each individual member to say this is what's happening in your area, on top of the emails we already get saying about TROs. So my question is, have I understood that correctly? We'll be getting it in nice, concise, one email. This is the works happening in your division in the next month. And so the question is how much notice. So the other kind of question that's connected to it is how are we going to measure whether or not this is successful? Has there been any consideration given as to when we're talking about this in 12 months' time, how will we know whether or not we've done a good job?
Less residents chasing you? Carl, were you going to? No?
Thanks. We've looked at how we can get the messages out to members about more significant and disruptive works. And we are doing some work around a specific member protocol, if you like, to advise you of those most disruptive parts of the network that will be impacted by roadworks or streetworks activities, to give you prior notice of things that are likely to happen. So that piece of work is ongoing at the moment, just to look at how that will work. But you really wouldn't want to know about all of those 44,000 pieces of individual permits on the network. So we are focusing on those that are most impactful and those that you really want to know about.
I think they've given this a good discussion. I think both sides have learned something. I think from our point of view, the module update and how that's going to work is something, and that protocol you just talked about. Plain English where we can, was from several members, and the actual spot of the roadworks are things that we want you to look at and probably come back to us with. Are there any things you want to ask of us that we can do in terms of getting this information to residents?
Not specifically to residents, but getting information to us and our teams in terms of where you see problems on the network. Part of that member protocol is to tell us about issues so that we can go and deal with them. And that's a real key point for me, is that if we don't know, we can't manage it. If we know about it, we can manage it, and then we can deal with it and sort it out, and we can try and reduce the issues that residents and the public are experiencing on the network. So, you know, that's part of the member protocol I just mentioned. It's a two-way flow of information, really. So if you see stuff on the network that you think is not quite right, some photographic evidence of it is really useful, so we can actually date and timestamp when it's happened, and we can deal with it. Thank you.
So members, are you content with where we are at the moment with those points that we've made? So we're asked to review the current practices, which I think we've done pretty well, advise the public of street works and road works within the county, and that monthly newsletter coming to us. Consider adopting Causeways content management module, and that we've just asked for that to come back to us when that's up and running. It'll be interesting that. And any recommendations to Cabinet for how street works and road works are communicated. I think the three of you received quite a lot of that this morning. So members, okay with all of that? Yeah. So let us move on then to, what's the time? I think we can go on to this quickly without a break. Brown tourist sign policy. And we got the same team?
No, Russ will leave us now, and
Yeah,
we're going to have
thank you, Russell.
David. Okay, so I'm have the introduction to this report. So this report sets out our approach to the brown tourist signs across the county. These signs play an important part in helping people find their way to key tourist destinations. They not only support visitors as they travel around our network, but also play a role in strengthening our local community and economy. Our policy is built on national guidance, particularly the Department for Transport's traffic signs, regulations and general directions, which set the legal framework for all road signs on the highway. It is important that we have a clear and consistent approach when we assess requests for brown signs, and this policy helps us do exactly that. However, we recognise that there are places where drivers may struggle with navigation. In situations where better wayfinding would improve both safety and traffic flow, the policy allows some flexibility even where a destination may not strictly meet the eligibility criteria. Finally, the report recommends a review of the application process. We want this to be as straightforward and user-friendly as possible, and this is a positive step towards improving the overall customer experience. Thank you.
Rob, first then.
Thanks, Chair. So I've got three kind of angles that I wanted to try and explore if possible. The first is in relation to the costs. I'm just inquiring as to whether or not the cost, I believe 257.50, it seems slightly above average of the comparable authorities. And I just wondered, given the fact that Norfolk is so reliant upon its tourism industry, and it's a huge part of our economy, whether or not any consideration had been given to that fee level, whether or not, you know, could it potentially be acting as a barrier for those smaller and more rural tourism businesses that might require several brown signs to make sure that people get to their destinations. So that's the first kind of question, but kind of linked to that, because I've mentioned about the rural nature of our county, whether I just to express the support for brown signs really and their importance. Yes, we are living in a digital age. We have sat-nav technology, but sometimes sat-nav doesn't get it right. It might not take the driver on the best route, the safest route, or the route that is best for that community nearby. It might be that a particular village or hamlet doesn't have the road network to cope with that level of volume. So we can see that brown signs are important there. So I just wanted to make that point. And then the third point really was in relation to whether or not we have any policy with regards to making sure that the brown signs that are out there are not only up to date, but also kept fresh. And I've got an example that I wanted to give the committee today. In 2014, the Iceni village closed in West Norfolk, near Oxborough Hall. And even to this day, the brown sign is still there. Okay, it might have closed written a lot by it. But to me, it makes me sad when I see it, because I used to enjoy going there as a kid. I can remember going with the school when I was younger. And I just also think it kind of sends the kind of wrong message that, you know, tourism places in Norfolk maybe are struggling. Yeah, I'm interested in the policy for refreshing old signs and whether or not the funds that we have take into account rather than just putting closed across it. Thank you.
Carl?
Yep, thank you. So just in terms of the costs, the costs for an assessment is the £257.50, and that's sort of in the middle of where we've assessed the application fee with our peer authorities. So that's purely for the assessment to consider whether a brown sign application would be successful or not. And then obviously on top of that, the applicant would then have to fund the cost of installation of the signs that we think is necessary to direct them towards the destination. So that it's difficult to give you an average price on in terms of how much that would cost for different scenarios, but the applicant would be responsible for those new signs to be erected on the highway network. In terms of the brown paid for, the applicant and if they need refreshing and replacing following RTC, for example, then they would have to fund that. And yeah, I'm concerned to hear that we have got some brown signs out there that are no longer required, so we can get those removed from the highway network.
Anybody else, Chris?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Again, this is something that we looked at, 3 years ago, Graham?
I think
3 years ago? I'm not going to ask a question. One of the problems that we had is we wanted to expand or probably improve the brown sign system because of the restrictions that we obviously have from a national perspective to look at something which was Norfolk dedicated. You know, a nice sage green sign with Norfolk on the top of it, and, you know, a finger sign for destination areas for shopping and resource and cafes, etc. And we followed that through, and then it transpired that there'd been a number of attempts to do such things across Norfolk, and the local planning authorities took differing views on that. And in fact, one not a million miles away from me actually refused it. We took it to the Secretary of State to appeal it, and the Secretary of State upheld the LPA's decision. So we have tried to do something to improve things for businesses on a much more modest scale of cost. But unfortunately, we've got the problem where we've got a number of LPAs across the county, have different views on that sort of thing. Norfolk has tried to pull it together, and unfortunately it's failed. I might add, if there was a single unitary, we wouldn't have that problem.
Anybody else? I think one of my points is tourism is written in big words about the brown signs, but it does say and economy. And some of the things that in that long list of what's in tourism, so a restaurant, for instance, wouldn't fit into our brown sign. But I have a restaurant in my area that's got a Michelin star. And that Michelin star brings in people from far. So how flexible or not can we be when we're talking about something that's tourism? And these people need, all the pubs and restaurants need business. And I'm not sure that we do that for businesses. We're big on tourism, but at the bottom, there are businesses that need that help.
Yeah, it's a tricky one, Chair, because obviously those sorts of destinations wouldn't be eligible. There would be numerous signs on the network that would just be too confusing for people, I would say. So we are following the national guidance and the legislation around this. So we have to sort of try to stick to those eligibility criteria. But we do have some flexibility where we know that there's a highway navigation issue that, you know, if a brown sign wasn't the right answer, we could look at what we could do with a black and white sign, direction sign.
Have members seen the black and white signs? Because I'd never seen them. They're like finger posts.
No, they're a traffic sign. But
a traffic sign.
But what they wouldn't do is they wouldn't name the actual destination. They would name the location. So a driver who was driving on the A149, for example, would know that that's where the road is, and that's where people would navigate, and they would know to turn at that location.
Right. Okay. I've got that wrong then. Yeah.
So it wouldn't say, I don't know, the Coach and Horses pub or anything. It would say South Street. That's where South Street is, and that's where you would turn off the main road network to get to that destination.
Right. How far away or how close does the brown sign have to be? Do we have a statutory?
No, it's a good question. It would be determined on the network requirements. So in some locations, you know, because a lot of businesses do have the websites, people have sat navs, but what they might need is just opposite that junction a brown sign to say this is where you turn off to get to the tourist attraction. So it might be limited in terms of how many signs you would need to guide people to the destination. But you might need some more in advance where the network is more complicated and where it's a busier network. So
Right.
it depends on the different circumstances.
And you have a lovely phrase, eligible but not entitled.
Yes.
And that is this process they go through.
Yeah.
And again, my business hat on with somebody gets there, yeah, they're eligible, but they're not entitled. We have in the county, in Norfolk County, other things that people do. So Go Digital, for instance, gives information to all sorts of businesses about that online presence, etc., etc. I don't know if we could do it or not, but if somebody got to the eligible but not entitled, please go to Fabian Eagle.
I think that the not entitled reference is really, yes, okay, they might be eligible, but do we really need brown signs for a highway network management perspective? And I think that's the key thing to get across. This policy really is about trying to help their businesses, but also what do we really need in terms of making sure that the network needs a sign to make sure people aren't having to do U-turns to get back to the destination that they need to, that they're trying to locate. So it's about making sure that yes, they might be eligible, but is there a real network or safety requirement for signs to be installed?
An interesting question is, Sonia just mentioned the digital age. Are brown signs needed anymore?
I think, if I'm honest, and David might help me here, but we probably get a handful of brown sign applications every year.
How many
now.
do we get in a year?
A handful, Vic, to be honest. We very, very few in terms of numbers.
Yeah. Rob and then Catherine.
And hearing those numbers, do we ever get any feedback with regards to the cost and how easy it's made? And connected to that, whilst it's not relevant to me in my more urban division, is it allowable for local member fund to pay? I know signage is included, but does that include brown signs? Just had a question for other members who might.
No feedback, really, Rob, in terms of the cost or what might be preventing people from doing this. But I think it's the nature of the digital world we live in, and I think that actually, do they need to invest in signs when their website is guiding people directly to their premise or location? But in terms of the local member fund, I think that's a legitimate use. Should you wish to use it?
Okay, Catherine.
Just to say, I think there is still a role for the brown signs, especially some of the places in my division. You wouldn't want to go down the flooded, narrow, no passing places road. You would want to go down the one that sort of is maybe a little bit further round, but more suitable for the traffic. So I think it's really helpful. The sat-nav will take you down the unsuitable road. They're all classified as C roads, but some of them are better than others.
So you're not fully convinced yet on your digital?
No, I can tell you my sat-nav is mad.
Are there any more questions? So we look at the recommendations to note the existing brown tourist sign policy in Norfolk, which is pretty much a national thing. Agree to a review and update of the current application process, and I presume, to Rob's point, we might look at the cost of that. If we can make it simpler, could we make it cheaper?
We wouldn't be reviewing the cost, I don't think, but what we would like to do is, because the application is still quite paper-based, if I can call it that, online. So it's about printing off a document and then sending it in to us. So we'd like to make that a lot more slicker online process, basically.
Right, okay. And any recommendations to Cabinet for how the brown tourist sign policy can be further improved? Well, you've just mentioned one. The only other thing is, for me, is the list that we have. I presume you've given us some, but it's probably endless what can and can't be in there. And my question would be, again, the Michelin-starred one in my division gets people from everywhere. It is a tourist event. And so maybe we could look at some of the things that cross the barrier. That
We'll take it away and we'll have a look.
Yeah, and I'll pester you. Yeah, I am not being paid by that establishment. Can I make that quite clear now? Yeah, they're certainly not free, Rob, I can tell you. So members are happy with that we've done that. So quickly move on to the forward work programme. I've got a couple of things that, and I know Tristan is waiting. There's some feedback from both of these items that I think we need to come back to our committee on there. And we've got TRO on in September.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. So Tristan, have you got any Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. So there was just a couple bits for members' attention. So members will see that the items suggested on TROs, potholes and street lighting have all been added to the future meetings. It was also to put out the call whether there's any other items that members would like to plan for November and beyond. I know that we've discussed unplanned works and how the process for those and how they're communicated. So that would be over to members if they wanted to suggest that as an item.
I think that needs to go on, yeah, the unplanned, because it is different.
There's an agreement there. Perfect. Thanks. Got that. I'll put that on our pipeline. And then we've also got a request for the National Strategic Infrastructure Delivery Plan. Sorry, a bit of a mouthful with that one. To come to July's meeting. That was on our pipeline following Norfolk Chief Executives looking at it. And that has now been requested to come to this committee for July. So just looking around the room to see if there's general support for that, if that's okay. That's fine.
Chris, have you
Thank
got...
you. There we are.
I'm
Perfect.
sure we'll see you, Tony, don't worry. Chris, you've got something to...
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just going back to the new Streetworks manager and the work that I understand that she's doing in the background in terms of the road space applications. So these are the first applications that come in from contractors or individuals to actually dig up our roads. She was actually looking about how they are actively managed, and I think they're probably different in each area. I'm not fully sure, but I got the impression that what we ought to be looking at is some form of gateway system, so we don't move to B until A has been done. I come back to my experience in Outwell where they're digging the road up before we've got any signs out. So I mean, it's imperative, I think, that we have a protocol that everybody understands and appreciates, and if there's room on the forward work programme, I would like to see the Streetworks manager come back with an update on where we are on that, please.
But it's an important point because I've not met her yet. I would be interested to bring her to this committee. Sorry? To bring her to this committee to say the things that she sees as her priorities in it and the things that she needs. So we've extended that invite to a future meeting. Rob?
Thanks, Chair. At the January full council meeting, there was a motion that was put forward to pair the government's proposed amended road safety strategy with ensuring that older drivers don't face barriers in accessibility. So any changes must be accompanied by measures to maintain mobility and social contact. And it was agreed that we would urge the government to ensure the checks are accessible, affordable and accompanied by clear guidance. There was also an element to discuss community transport schemes structured on to take that into account. So the question is whether or not this committee is happy to take that on.
So the main one, as I understand it, was eyesight. That was the main thrust of that piece of legislation. It wasn't about any other physical condition.
And how the motion was with regards to the risks to rural mobility?
Yeah, Tristan's got the answer.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Colwell. So yeah, that item is being picked up, as I understand it, through the Adult Social Care and Public Health Committee for the public health element. But you're absolutely right in that if there's a implication for community transport and that's something that could be examined, that could be an item to be put forward. So if it's kept to that line of transport, absolutely.
Okay, members got that, yeah. Anything else? Well, thank you very much. Oh, David, sorry.
As we come to the end of term, Chairman, I hope I can speak for the entire committee to thank you for your chairmanship of these meetings, which has been clearly amongst the most able.
Thank you very much. Bringing tears to my eyes now. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And maybe I hope we all come back and reignite our friendship. Rob.
Sorry, Chair. I have thought, I would like to concur with that comment, but I have thought of another possible proposed item, if I may. And that's, I understand that the Norwich Western Link has a local liaison group of 25 plus parish representatives, and I wondered whether or not it would be beneficial to know about member attendance at local liaison groups, what impacts these could have on the understanding of major schemes. Could we bring this item to the forward work plan to ensure local concerns are fed directly into the project planning, because we're hearing that it seems to be rather late in the...
Sorry, do we know about this?
Yeah.
And so you would agree with Rob that...
We can bring something to a future committee meeting.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, members. So it's... Where are we? We're under 11:30. I think that's a good finish time. So thank you for your help. Good luck in your elections. And I hope a lot of us get in and come back and be friends again. Officers, can you pass on to Russell as well? Thank you very much indeed. And you.